I'm sure.
Fine.
Just so you know, we're public.
Pretending bad, guys.
Can you go?
So basically, Clara, if something bad happens, the volume is this one. Don't touch anything underneath here. Be very, very careful. If someone bumps this is going to fall over. This is the worst.
So keep people the fuck away from
Pretty much.
Okay, cool.
Also live. So
Keeping people away from it at any means.
yeah. So if it starts peaking a lot, I doubt it will. People are going to talk relatively softly. It's not quite at full volume, so if someone's quite quiet, you can turn it up. Apart from that, that's a bad boy. Wires. This is far as
Are we allowed to have two people on the team? Yep. Okay, good.
We're about to begin very soon.
We should be able to begin very soon. I'm going to talk for like 1 minute just to cut down.
or if you can have it up on your laptop or something.
My phone would do.
If you want to sit down next to Clara, then you can do it as well.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Elise is going to grab some more. So we'll just have, I guess, some rows at the back. Hi everyone. We'll be starting very soon, so if you could all just, face around. Thank you all for coming. We're going to start off with Saad. He's going to do our welcome to country and introduce us to the event.
Hi everyone, my name is Saad. I'm the executive producer of Woroni Radio. And sort of this event...
Saad, can you please stand behind the microphone so
Behind
we can have it for the people live streaming?
Yeah, so this event, it's for people that are aspiring content producers, people who have worked with us in the past. So we've got over 30 shows this sem, and we've had more previously just before COVID time. So it's something that we'd like to continue, and development opportunities such as this one, I think they're really valuable for students, and just to talk with industry professionals and develop themselves. So before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people, and I would like to extend that respect to elders both past, present, and emerging. So to start off our program, I'll get Bernie, our radio editor, to talk about Woroni Radio and what we do.
Hi everyone, my name's Bernie. I'm the current radio editor of Woroni Radio. Haven't been in the role for long, but that's the nature of the role. It turns over every year. Woroni has been around since 1950. We celebrated our 70th anniversary last year. We started off as a student newspaper where we published fortnightly. We transitioned to a magazine not that long ago. The radio part of Woroni, sorry, my bias was showing there for a second. It came about in 2012. And then shortly after, in 2017, Woroni TV was created. ANU has had a history of having a radio station. We had the ANU radio station, which broadcasts out of Drill Hall Gallery on campus, and that actually turned into 2XX, which is one of the local community broadcasters. Louis is one of our presenters from Woroni who transferred to 2XX, so really continuing the tradition of ANU students jumping into community broadcasting here in Canberra. We're very lucky to have a really good roster of student presenters on our on-air every semester. The nature of student radio is that no matter what is going on campus, someone's going to talk about it, and then the next show immediately afterwards is going to be people randomly tapping into a microphone for an hour. It's very experimental, very fun. It's a nice safe space for people to come in and talk about what they want to. They can choose to further it, make it into their own podcast, publish it online separately, or just have some fun on the air for a little bit. I'm very excited today to be hosting this workshop. I have to congratulate Saad. He's put in absolute hard yards getting this together. It's a huge labour of love for him. So. Hopefully we'll be hosting more of these events in the future, so I hope you all enjoy today, and we'll see you again maybe next semester. Thank you.
Yep, and like Bernie said, we're really lucky to have industry professionals just with us. So our first presenter, Paula Kruger, she's from the ABC. Many of you would have heard her from the afternoons program on ABC Radio Canberra, 666. And in her new role as ABC's talent manager, she nurtures talent just across the network. So we're lucky to have her here and hopefully learn about her journey in broadcast journalism and what tips she has for us aspiring content producers.
Thank you very much. I'll just put down my peppermint tea so I'm digestively settled. and it's warm. So if you're doing any voice work, make sure you've got a warm drink with you. Tip number one. Firstly, I too would like to acknowledge that we are standing on Aboriginal land, the Ngunnawal and Ngambri land, so I extend my respect to their leaders past, present and emerging, any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who are in the room today. And I'd like to do that by saying the coolest word in Canberra, Yuma. It means hello in Ngunnawal. So hello to you, and it's great to be in your company. But what I'm doing, you can see my bio looks very messy. It's got a lot of different things in it. Please know that I've been in the industry for quite a while, and started working at ABC in 1999, started working radio in Thailand. That's a story best told over a few beers. But started working in Thailand in the early 90s and worked there for a few years, and have ended up as talent manager today. And I'm hoping to tell you a little bit about what got me here, but also the things that I think, I'm going to be talking to you as if you are people who are really interested in podcasting, really interested in broadcasting. I'm making that very bold assumption, mainly because I'm a talent manager and I want as many as people doing this stuff as possible. But I'll be making that assumption when I'm talking to you today. And I'll be talking to you about the things that I think could help you, because they helped me, things that could help you have a long-term career in doing this. So I'm going to tell you my story. So firstly, I grew up between outback WA towns, and when I say outback WA towns, I'm talking Carnarvon, Kalgoorlie. I grew up between those towns because my dad's from WA, and Fiji. Fiji is where Mum's from. So if you're growing up in Kalgoorlie in the 70s, you don't really feel like the most privileged person on the face of the planet. However, when you go to Fiji, you realise, oh my God, I'm one of the most privileged people on the face of the planet. So moving between those two places, you learn to change your accent very quickly. But also, like when I was in Fiji with my mother's family, she was from a big family. I'm talking 9 kids. And so 2 of those kids were people with disabilities. So my uncle was a quadriplegic and my aunt was a paraplegic. So when you're in a third world country and with their level of disability, you couldn't move them around much at all. And so in a country like that, where there's basically poverty, their world was a room. It was a room with a window, but they didn't move around much. That was their world. So when you went to see them, you had to bring the world into that room. So my mum was fabulous at it. She can talk. A lot of Islander women can talk, but my goodness, she's quite exceptional. She could talk and talk and talk. She'd bring the world into that room. And I couldn't understand what she was saying most of the time because she'd speak in Fijian to them or in Hindi. But you could just tell it was interesting. There was a cadence to it. There was a rhythm. There was a passion. You knew that there was detail in there by the reaction of my aunt and uncle. The eyebrows would move and they'd go, yeah, ooh, you know, all this kind of thing. My job as a very young kid was to bring my experience into the room. I really liked film. So I used to do, as a 6-year-old, 6 or 7 minute versions of cinematic masterpieces like The Sound of Music and Grease. And not very well, but I was all singing, all dancing, but that's what I did. That's what I brought into the room. But one thing that I always noticed was that there was this moment that you had to respect, and that was when the radio was turned on. Because that radio brought in news from around the world for 2 people for whom the world was that room. So you had to be quiet. And they were fiercely intelligent people, you know, but they needed this. It fed their soul, it fed their brain. And as they got older, you know, unfortunately, they died in their 30s, within a year of each other. And at that stage, around when they died, was when I was a teenager. And I was going through one of those teenage phases. Well, not teenage phases, it's just what you are at that age. Dripping with angst. Didn't speak. Thought that I had nothing worth contributing, nothing to say, just wanted to disappear into the world. So when they died, I thought back to the last time I had the privilege of being in that room, and I didn't say a thing. I didn't bring anything into that room. And I've regretted it ever since. And so it's kind of that has driven me into storytelling and into broadcasting. And, you know, it's good to have these reasons. It's good to have these things because this industry is nuts. You'll be doing things that are insane. The jobs that you will be doing haven't even been invented yet. So it's really good to constantly remind yourself, why am I doing this? Start when things get a little bit crazy, but have a really good reason. And I want you to really think of that reason. You can start thinking of it right now. Maybe it's still to come. I sort of knew I wanted to get into storytelling, but I didn't realise I wanted to do broadcast news until I was probably your age. It didn't come until I was at university. And I was an anthropology student. Yes, they say, what job are you going to get with that? But I was an anthropology student. My main paper, because it was the early 90s, my main paper was looking into the report into the Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody. I was in WA, so I was looking at a report that now Senator Pat Dodson, but he was Commissioner Dodson then, had done into the underlying factors in WA. And so it was the underlying factors, Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody, section 5.13, which was police and news media. And I read that and I thought, I've got to do news. I've got to get into journalism. And started a very long journey, which, you know, I can tell you at another time, but started a very long journey that got me into news and broadcasting, starting with, you know, leaving WA and going into Thailand because I couldn't get opportunities in WA. But anyway, the journey started with going overseas, getting some experience, and then coming back and eventually trying to work my way into the ABC. And since then, I've pretty much been bouncing around all over the place, doing lots of interesting things. So while this is a scary, disrupted industry, it's also a really exciting one. It's one where you don't have career ladders. You have what they call, I think it was Sheryl Sandberg described it as the career jungle gym. You know, who needs a career ladder anyway? You're sort of going up one step at a time. Every time you look ahead, you're looking at your boss's ass. You know, whereas if you approach your career more as the career jungle gym, you know, there's so many different ways of getting ahead. Sometimes to get ahead, you might have to go backwards a bit and work your way around. You know, it's a far more interesting way to have a career, and it's far more dynamic, and it's also makes your career far more resilient because you've got a broader range of skills and you can cope with whatever this crazy industry throws at you. But essentially, what brings me, what it all comes down to for me is storytelling. So, you know, who are you? You've got to know who your audience is, and by that I mean that privilege of being in that room. It all comes back to my uncle and aunt and being in that room and the stories you bring, right? So you've got to know your audience, you've got to respect your audience, and you've got to bring something to them. And tell a story, make it interesting. There is enough boring stuff out there already. So for example, today we're talking about podcasting and broadcasting and, you know, the road to broadcasting. So if I wanted to give you my main points could easily be distilled into 3 main dot points, which is know your audience, have good content, can't remember what the third one is, but I'm sure it's really good. But the way I've chosen to tell you that story, because I don't want you to just hear my dot points, you know, I want better than that. So the way I chose to tell you that story is to tell you the personal story, which is hard to do on some days, when you're hormonal especially, but it's hard to do the personal stuff. But that's because I don't just want you to hear my story, I want you to feel it. And there is a famous quote from Maya Angelou, I think it was, who said, people forget what you say, people forget what you do, they never forget how you make them feel. So if you're working in audio, you're always trying to make someone feel something. And being a talent manager at ABC, I'll be stalking all your careers because I can't wait to see what you come up with. I can't wait to see the things that I'm going to learn from you because, once again, it's an industry where you don't just learn from people behind you. In no time, you're going to be the old people and you're going to have people, generation coming up behind you going, what the hell are you doing? That's part of the beauty of being in this industry, and I'm so glad you're part of it, and I can't wait to see what you come up with. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the very insightful work. So now we'll get Amanda Paul with us. So Amanda works with the Community Broadcasting Association of Australia, and what she says is a dream job is working in Parliament as a federal political reporter. And she grew up in Canberra before moving to Sydney to study journalism, but now she's back here working. So Amanda, I'll hand it to you.
Hello everyone. So I'm one of those strange people who actually grew up in Canberra and then escaped and then has been dragged back by the pull of federal politics, as I think a lot of people do. So basically what I'm going to talk about is how I got to where I am, and then maybe a bit of advice on things that you might be able to do in your journey into paid work in the media. So in terms of my journey, obviously everyone's journey is different in this industry. There's no kind of hard and fast rules about like what works and what doesn't work. But hopefully my example might be a path that you could try and emulate, or at least parts of it. So I started in journalism going to university in Sydney at a university called UTS. And how I ended up there was doing a lot of research into which universities had the best graduate outcomes. So when I decided that I wanted to do journalism, I was like, okay, which institution is going to be the one that is actually going to get me employed? Because this is a hard industry with too many graduates and not enough jobs. Which is not to say that you can't get a job, you just got to work at it really, really hard. So I went to UTS because they had some really good graduate outcomes that were employed in the industry that I wanted to get into. And it was a very practically minded course. I have many thoughts on which course is best to study to get into journalism, but that's a different story. But basically what UTS taught me was how to be a modern journalist or a modern content producer. So I came out of there knowing how to shoot video, how to record audio to broadcast quality. I could do presenting, and I could talk on the radio, and I could write a story. So that I kind of came out as the sort of whole little package to be offered into various employment opportunities. But I think that one of the main things that really got me into a job in journalism was just experience. So doing internships, getting work experience, doing freelance work, starting podcasts, that sort of thing. There's only so much that a university degree can teach you. It's good to kind of get the baseline foundation, but in terms of what actually gets you into a job and knowing that you are employable is getting experience, and that's through internships and volunteering and ideally things that actually get you paid. So I did lots and lots of internships across the broad range of things. So did a couple at SBS, at ABC, volunteered for my local community radio stations, and now I've come back full circle, started at a community radio station, now here again at community radio station, at community radio. So definitely recommend doing a bunch of experience before you look at getting paid work. So eventually when I did start getting paid, my first one was as a freelancer, essentially. I just pitched article ideas to a photography magazine that was happy to pay me. But my first kind of more regular job was a contact that I got through an internship. So I did an internship at Canberra Times, and then they offered me a job at the Queen B&H just down the road. So again, that's one thing that is really good about getting that experience is that it's about networking, essentially. So that the next time that organisation thinks about, oh, you know, we need another journalist or we need someone to do some part-time work, they think of you because you were the person who came in and showed them something special and said that you can do the work. So then I moved into SBS, again, through contacts that I had made through internships. So I did an internship at Dateline, and they passed my details to Insight, a program that previously was run by Jenny Rocky, but now is run by someone else whose name escapes me. So again, was just one of those ones where they were looking for someone, my name came up because they already knew me, so I'd already worked there, already done a couple of weeks experience with them, and got a job in there. And that was kind of the foot in the door, which was my sort of jumping off point into long-term kind of employment in journalism. So scored a SBS News cadetship, which was incredible. Kind of it followed on from what I had learned at university. So where I came out knowing how to do radio, do TV, do online, they basically put me in positions where I did all of those things, but actually broadcast it. So that was an excellent experience. And then in the press gallery, which is incredible. I think that growing up in Canberra, federal politics kind of gets into your bones. So I always wanted to come back and be in the big house on the hill that I had grown up looking at. So started off doing that with SBS as a producer, and then wanted to kind of get into more reporting roles and moved into my current role in community radio. So essentially, I do all of the federal political content for Australia's community radio stations, or not all of them, but around 120 is what we're doing at the moment. So in terms of advice of how to kind of get into this industry, number one, like I said, get experience. It doesn't really matter where that is, although ideally some of the big names are ideal. But essentially, you want to be able to come out of university as the complete package, essentially. So you want to be able to come to an employer and say, hey, I've already made a podcast, or I've already presented on the radio, or I can already, shoot video and make social media content and such. So you need to kind of emulate that, thinking, okay, what does an employer want, and how do I create myself into that sort of package deal for employers? I would also say that, like Paula said, it's a tough industry, and it's only getting tougher. Many people that I know have gone through not just one, but several redundancy processes. So the media is hard, but again, it's not to say that you can't get a job. I'm employed, so is Paula. There are many people who are employed happily in this industry, but it's hard. And so I think the thing that you really have to know is that you have to really want it. You can't just kind of roll out of university and kind of look around and have a job that just flops into your lap. You have to go out and search for those opportunities. You have to be the people who call your local broadcaster to see if you can get any experience, and the little person has to call someone who you admire and say, hey, can we get coffee and chat about what advice they might have for you. You're the person who in your spare time might start a podcast or volunteer at their local community radio station. There are a bunch of great ones in Canberra if you're interested. So you really have to be looking for those opportunities to be able to put stuff on your resume before you get into the employment market. I think it's just about being bold. I think that really this, as much as I can say it's a hard industry, it is, but it's also one of the most exciting, diverse industries that you could possibly be in. I get to cover things that are different every single day. I'm learning things and meeting new people every single day, and that is an incredible opportunity to be able to do that and get paid for it. So I would absolutely encourage you to pursue a job in the media, but like I said, you have to really want it, and you have to be bold in pursuing what you want.
So next up we have Dr. Rod Lambert and Dr. Will Brown. So they're from the Australian National Centre for awareness of science. To put that up, but they run a podcast called The Wholesome Show. It has a significant following here on camera, and they record right off the AU studio. So we'll get this.
That's a universal following now. This is just for recording, not amplifying.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Are we there?
Yes.
Are we on that?
Oh, no, this is pictures. You've got pictures of our journey together, which I love because it started when Will was young and I was
There's a picture of me as a baby. It's not me as a
Yeah.
baby.
That's
So,
close enough.
I'm almost a baby in these pictures. You put them up to me the other day. I was like, where did you get that from? That's me as an infant. Don't show the pictures. Don't show the pictures, sir.
You know what your pictures
Okay, I just got one question. I want to draw on something Paula said before.
Is it a warm drink? Because I don't get cold drinks.
Has anyone ever been in a boring lecture? Anyone hand two hands, three hands?
Welcome, here we go.
Finally, this is the most boring one. No, we're lecturers. We're lecturers here at AU. Our job is to lecture, whether it's in the job title. But it doesn't have to be boring. We know. We went through university. Paula, Amanda, you might remember sort of boring times at uni where lecturers would drone on, telling these terrible things that are full of just the most boring details that no one cares about. You often get these lectures. I remember viscerally this guy that would look above us and sort of talk to that person that is up there in the lights that no one can ever see. The boring lecture is a stereotype, but it's a true stereotype. I don't want to badmouth my friends and colleagues around the rest of the campus.
I'll do it.
You can do that later.
Our lectures are way better than theirs. That's usually true.
No, this is an aspiration. This is an aspiration. But I think we know that lecturing can be an incredibly boring thing. That talking to students about content that we think that would be valuable for them, in their degree, in their lives, anything like that, is sometimes way more boring than it has to be. And that's not a realization that we have had. I think it's a realization that everyone has had. And what we've tried to do over the last few years is...
So that's really
It's a file. It's I think.
They stopped. That's weird.
No more lectures, no more lectures.
No, but what we've tried to do over the last few years is turn the content around. So we teach science communication. We teach the way that science interacts with the rest of society. Through politics, through the ethics of science, all sorts of things like that. And our goal is to say, let's not do the content in the most boring way possible. Let's try and have fun with it. And so, over the last few years, we've podcasted. We've tried to tell the stories of science in ways that might stimulate, might do something a little bit different, might, as Paula said before, make people feel
Podcast came late. We started our 10-year journey to overnight success about 8.5 years ago. So 18 months, watch this space, we're going to be zillionaires. So this is where we began. That's all he ever did, that's how he got the cars. And the point of this is not to only talk about us, but interrupt at any point, because otherwise we'll get to this apparent straight away. The bottom line is, we're podcasters, not professional, what do you call it? Media people. So we started with the Google Hangouts. You don't even remember those? So we used our position as lecturers in science communication to get access to people. So you've got the former head of the National Health and Medical Research Council who said, hey, we're from the ANU, want to have a chat with us? And then we asked them stupid questions. That's our current director, that's Liv Greenleaf's Australia. This is one of the early science editors of the conversation. That's a guy called Randy Olson, who's written great books on communicating science from his perspective as a former Harvard marine biologist and movie maker and communication writer. So we started doing these Google Hangouts. We got, I think the best one got 55 people.
Oh, awesome.
We kicked us. So because of what we already had in our networks, we got to leverage way more people than we're above our pay grade people. But anyway, that wasn't good enough. I think it'll flip it. So then we thought, let's do it all backwards. We'll start with live shows. And we didn't know what a podcast was, did we?
No, I don't know.
So we started this thing called Kind of Thinking. And we were lucky we got some small amount of money from the grant. We went straight into pub shows, so live pub shows with distinctive guests. And again, we stopped with a theme. I think that this one was wrong. Basically, anything we get around the notion of wrongness, we just get experts in, whatever they came from. We go like one at a time. We didn't have the hot drinks, we actually drank the cold drinks. There were quite a few pints involved in this. And yeah, we're lucky we got to the last time so a few other people in because we already knew people. It wasn't just
the point of this, what we're trying to do is the academic topics that we'd be covering anyway in our lectures, in our classrooms, the things we'd be talking about with our students, but trying to talk about it in a different way, a drunken way, more of a pub show sort of thing. Our goal was really to say, if people are interested in this in the classroom, and we're interested in it anyway, surely there is a boundary where we can make it entertaining. We can make it something that will grab people out there in a pub while they're having a beer. They might learn some things as well.
So we call ourselves dirtbags with PhDs, which helps because it's not the traditional PhD model. Might as well push the button. I can't remember what's next. I'm sure it's going to Alright, when we turn into this, there's the early version. As I say, Will was 12 and I was fat. That's pretty much how we remember it. I've gotten younger and Will's got more hair. So we started the wholesome show because kind of think he was going in one direction, we decided to go in another. So we went with this format where we're getting it straight to pops, didn't we? Straight to pops. Pub interviews and stuff. So we'd sell tickets, we'd sell 70, 80 tickets, fill a room, get people having a few beers, having some food, occasionally heckling, just having fun. But again, because of where we worked, we could get Brian Schmidt, we could get people from embassies, that sort of thing. Again, not because we're special, but when we say I'm calling from the ANU, people tend to listen. This works for students really well. I encourage students who might listen to leverage your position as an ANU affiliate, and people will go, oops, the ANU know they should. Just don't underestimate the power of that.
Or to interrupt, as Sandy from the ANU's premier student organisation, Woroni.
There you go.
Works.
And I was going to call you just this morning. What have we got next? Alright, so that's what our live show looked like. And the bottom line was, yes, it was serious topics, but shitbag style. We basically did stuff we wanted to listen to. So if you wanted to swear, we'd swear. If you wanted to take it in and let's say less suitable for children direction, we would. The guests would always come along. I think we only had one refusal ever in I don't know how many guests we've had in different variations. Because we make it fun. Never pick on the guest. Except in fun, only pick on each other. That's what we're demonstrating for them. No one asks us anything at this point. Too much. I'll pick again. No, you're right.
That's the same photo.
Oh, yeah, there we are, new pub. Younger, fatter, as we said. Might as well go ring. Then what happened? Oh yeah, it was getting harder to get guests. Whenever you do a live show, so we have one show a month, you need 4 guests, you have to sell tickets in advance because otherwise you couldn't afford to do what you were doing. And we started getting guests in, so on the last day, or the day of the show, oh, so I can't make it, have a great show anyway. And to which we replied, oh, you, what are we going to do while we're on set? Too late. You never that was out. So we started podcasting. Okay.
So our goal since we've been podcasting is to explore those same stories. We want to tell interesting stories about science. So now we rely less on other people, although we're involved with people all the time. We talk to experts, we talk to some of the luminaries of science around the world, around Australia, whenever they're in town. But a lot of what we're doing now is telling the interesting stories of science. Our goal is to tell something that's a real story, that has real learning, stuff that is actually will open people's mind a little bit. But always, we're looking for the things that will grab people's attention, that is not just how scholarly they might be, but it's the dirtbag, the funny, the thing that you remember that you will tell your friends later at the pub. Our goal in everything that we do from now on is basically to find those stories that are visceral and they're grabbing, that might have things that make your brain work, but they might also have things that make your guts work as well. The thing that is really gross. And I think one of the things that Paula was saying before is that she wants the radio to make her feel something, and she wants her
preferences are disgust and pity.
Yeah, well,
that's my preference.
Well, look, and so what we tend to do now in terms of structuring our episodes is one of us will tell a story from science to the other person. The other person will react and provide that sort of audience surrogate. And I think it got me the other day. It was just last week on the episode that Rod was telling the story. That grappled with a bunch of ethics issues in modern tech. You know, there's a bunch of things. We know that Facebook is surveilling us all. Amazon knows we're pregnant before we're pregnant.
That's time.
It's time, yeah, but Amazon does as well. And all sorts of dodgy things. I'm used to all of those ethical sorts of issues. But then Rod raised this ethical issue with me that actually hit me and made me feel really gross and horrified. And normally I'm often tend my emotional reaction, and actually got this emotional reaction. So the goal that we always try and have is...
Tell them what it was.
No, I'm not going to tell them what it was. They can bloody listen.
Listen to the last episode.
No, but it was something that actually provoked this really strong, true reaction from me. And I think that, going back to what Paul was saying, when you get people to have that strong, real emotion, a real emotion, then you've grabbed them. You've got them. They're listening. They're stuck, and they can't let go until that emotion has achieved catharsis, has achieved resolution. Our goal is to use science in that storytelling. But always, if you can make people feel something, then you've got it.
And I'd add to that, you've got to feel it yourself. Authenticity. I don't know about political reporting and so forth, but doing stuff like this, if you don't seem genuine, it's good. It'll stand out a mile away. It'll feel wrong, you won't enjoy it as much, but if you're authentic, also your guests will tell you things that might astound you. I don't know about the time, so I keep talking about this.
I think you can just find out. That's why not.
Well, push the button. How would I know? I have excellent. There you go. Why?
That's it.
Always know with Dan.
Thank you.
Yes, do. Hi.
So everyone, this is Chris Modis. He's calling in from Denmark, and he's the CEO of Bird Systems. So they're the company that's graciously provided 2 licenses for students of ours to actually read to. And they've given a special discount for the well, but I wanted them to talk about their company and sort of what they do and how they're helping people to shape stories. So Chris is up at 8 a.m. right now, starting work, so we'll get him in a couple minutes.
Is that my cue? Hi everyone. It's really good to see real people in a room together, I have to tell you. That's encouraging for us. We're still all in lockdown here, so count yourselves lucky and stay safe and distant, of course. Does everyone hear me? Can someone wave at me or something? Yay! Thank you. So, as I've said, I am lucky enough to be the CEO of Bird Systems. This is probably never heard of us. Here's a very quick intro. We're a small independent Danish software company founded in 2008, and we have focused on specializing in audio production tools specifically designed to make storytelling easy. Our background is actually from community radio and broadcasting, public broadcasting. Initially, when we started in Hindenburg, this is way before podcasting was a thing. We were focused on creating a tool that made it really easy in Zambia for a small community radio station we were building for people who had very little computer literacy and in general rural Zambia as things are, and maybe had 4 or 5 years of education at best. and tried to somehow create an audio production tool which was easy to understand and allowed them to focus on telling their story. What we soon found out was that that's actually something that is universally needed. And so we decided to make a little company around that. So from the beginnings, supporting storytellers has been our passion. Around the world, this is really what we want to do. We want to focus on reducing technical barriers to recording and editing audio and help encourage people from all walks of life to make themselves heard. We help our users any way we possibly can, inside our little amount of resources, to give them the opportunity to tell their stories without necessarily having to have a technical background and access to huge resources. Obviously, podcasting has grown. This has become really relevant, thankfully, as more and more people have realized that audio is a fantastic platform to tell stories, and have really been looking around for a tool that makes it easy for them to focus on that and let us do a lot of the background technical work for them. So today our software is used by journalists in some of the biggest and most prestigious national broadcasting stations around the world, but more importantly for us, it's used by hundreds of small community and indigenous and student radio stations around the globe, from Nepal to Guatemala, Australia to the Gambia, and of course now thousands of independent podcasters in the world, and that's really fantastic for us. I could spend, a good 3 days talking about how fantastic Hindenburg is, but really that's not that interesting. I think the only message I want to get across in terms of Hindenburg is that we're here. Am I still on the light? Are you still hearing me? Okay, good. That was start maybe. We're here to help you get your message out. We've got a great support team that's focused on helping you. The people you speak to and support if you need help are the people that actually make the program. So you're not going through some call center that has a long list of questions to ask you to try to get you to give up. I think the interesting thing about what's going on at the moment is that obviously that audio as a medium is having a great revival. And with that, the possibilities of an audio-related career are exploding. Now, just today I was reading that the demand for audio story editors and creators was about 3 times the number that are available in the US. The US, like it or not, love it or leave it, it's the place that kind of defines the trends that happen in so many parts of the world going forward. And that trend is filtering out to the rest of the world as podcasting and storytelling grow. No matter what medium or what genre you choose, whether it's live radio, podcasting, oral history, audiobooks, audio tours, even audio games, the basic difference between the products that attract an audience and the ones that don't are going to be your storytelling skills. So this is my little inspirational speech for you today. As much as I appreciate a good hour of house on a Friday evening to warm up before hitting the dance floor, 9 times out of 10 I would not be able to tell you whether I just listened to an AI-created playlist or a carefully crafted DJ set. If that DJ has not wound a mystical red thread through the set with anecdotes and background tales of how the music was created, I may as well just shout, "Alexa, play some house music," at the speaker in my kitchen. It's all about the story. When you spend months as an investigative journalist creating reports on incredibly well-documented crimes or uncovering massive corruption, what good is it going to do if no one could be bothered to listen to your report? A drive time DJ does not succeed because she's on air. A comedian does not make you laugh just because they're speaking. They capture your attention because of the way they spark your imagination. They trigger personal visualizations in your head. The way they can arouse emotions so that you can really take the time to listen and engross yourself in the story. That is the strength of audio, that is the strength of radio, telling stories. The personal connection that you make, that you can create by making it sound like you're talking to each other, and every one of your listeners directly telling them a personal story. That is what is going to be the difference between you having a successful radio career or not. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, I'm just going to be like an executive, or I just want to be a technical person. But at the end of the day, if you're in radio or any audio storytelling medium, you should be worried about this. You should be worried about whether the person representing you to the audience is telling a good story. You should have, in a student station, the person who's running around tidying up after you. Hopefully you're all doing it yourself, but I've been in studio radio and that's probably not happening. Probably sad, right? Those people should be listening to you and say, wait a minute, this person on air is just not telling a story. Run into it and say, come on, make it personal, make it a story. As students at a college radio, you have a unique opportunity, a privileged access to individual resources and into incredible resources that a very small part of the world's population ever gets. I would really encourage you to use this time to learn how to tell spellbinding stories. I was listening to Woroni radio this morning. I spent about an hour and a half listening to your different programs. And I have to say, a lot of you are really doing it well. The one thing that really irritates me is you've got to look at your levels, but that's a technical question that anyway. The other thing with radio and audio is set your levels. But anyway, back to the real story. You've got to focus on spending this. You've got a playground while you're at Woroni where you can mess up, where you can try different formats. Spend that time thinking about how do I tell stories, how do I get people to listen to me. Avoid, as a classic student radio, sitting three friends in a room and talking to each other and forget you're talking to someone else. Think about all the time, the reason you're talking to those three friends or two friends in the studio is to tell a story together to the people listening to you. Not to tell each other about Friday night. Sorry, whoever it was that I was listening to that was talking about Friday night. As you can tell, I never got really good at telling stories, so they sent me up to manage everyone else. But anyway, so I can't promise that I have anything more useful to tell you other than telling stories, but Start asked me to field some questions before I leave, so if you want to, you can shoot at me now.
Okay.
And I can't hear it. Okay, I hear you now. Sure. So off the top of my head, at Wollongong, the whole radio and audio storytelling used Hindenburg to teach and train students. At Tuza Radio in Sydney, I can't remember how many, but 6 or 7 or 8 different community radio stations around Australia currently use it. There's a lot of independent podcasters and people working for ABC that are producing from home and providing stories to ABC. that use Hindenburg. Oh, sorry. And the CMT, the Community Media Training Organization, who trains a lot of community radio around Australia. They also use Hindenburg to train with.
So any other questions? Does anyone have? So we don't have questions. We covered it pretty well. But thank you for waking up early and just talking to us about that one. Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's all. So thank you very much for being here.
Sure. Keep well everyone.
So the next presenter we have is Louis Fester. So he was with Woroni for about 2 years now. Worked with two products. Community radio and is on the show. So again.
Hey, I'm Louis. I'm a third-year law student and IR student here at ANU. Sal asked me to just sort of share my experience at Woroni and just like student radio in general. So I'm just gonna sort of go through how I got here and then some lessons that I learned along the way, I guess. Very like student radio focus as opposed to big like media focus. So I started Woroni in 2019 as a producer, like first year, first sem at ANU. Applied online via Skype call before I even got to campus. I was really keen. Unlike most people, I didn't start as a presenter. I just went straight into producing. I think I was just too nervous to like actually speak on it. So I thought I'd sort of sit back and just see what's going on, like suss out how everything works, learn a lot from the other producers type thing. In total, I worked as a producer for 4 semesters, so 2 years, just at Woroni, under 3 different radio editors. So Woroni was not wrong, they really do come and go. But it's really useful actually working under more than one sort of boss, because you do see all the different approaches and the different aspects that they favour and the different elements that they want to work on. Producing really taught me a lot about radio and ironically actually radio presenting as well. So I learned lots of like the administrative and technical sides of broadcasting, really valuable. Not only in like stuff I did, but also just hearing about what other members of the team are doing, which I thought was really useful. Also like practical stuff like setting up DJ decks, setting up monitors and mics, just like useful, really fundamental stuff that I found really valuable at Woroni. Also learned a lot about presenting, because it was sort of my job to give all my shows feedback about that presenting. So I definitely identified and sort of like picked up certain things to do and certain things that worked and certain things that really didn't work. I mean, as a producer, you're also like a listener, so you get that like simultaneous experience where you're like, oh, well, I don't really like that as a listener, or like, oh wow, that was really clever. So really good for actually honing your presenting is producing and listening and thinking like, what would I have done? Oh, that's really great, like that sort of stuff. And yeah, after producing for a sem, I started presenting as well in Sem 2, 2019. So yeah, I spent a while co-presenting Tell Your Mama to Me with 3 of my friends. And I actually went on to move in with those guys, like my best mates now. So that was a great experience. I also picked up a second show in Sem 2 of last year, which was working closely with a fellow producer, Jacinta, and a lovely tech person, Beck. And we worked together to present and produce Woroni Liveland, which was basically like a rip-off of like a version type thing. Like it was getting in live music acts from Canberra and just getting them to do songs on air, which is really cool, really fun. It was part of like Bernie's overall focus on getting more live acts in the studio, which was really, really awesome. So we get a local Canberra artist in, get them to play some songs, record it, then interview them, and then do like local gig guide update at the end of the show. So it was a really, really good project, and sort of involved like a lot of different areas because I got to do the social media, I got to do the tech setup for the instruments, like all sorts of stuff. So that was really, really valuable. Overall, at Woroni, my experience really like helped really develop me both like professionally and personally. Like met some really cool people, gained some really cool radio knowledge. And at the start of this year, I decided to sort of take that to 2XX, which is like a Canberra community radio station. It's actually opposite Kokomo's in Civic. It's really just like tucked away up there. But they have a really, really good studio. They recently just updated the whole thing, like fully digital boards. It's really cool. And I actually initially came into contact with the 2XX station manager via Woroni and via Woroni. So again, just like another really useful student radio connection. And yeah, Woroni will even, I don't know if this is still around, so like assuming it's not, but they did offer to pay for the training for 2XX, which was really awesome because it is like a bit expensive, and it was like just like really cool to like get a foothold into that via, you know, student radio. And so yeah, currently I'm at 2XX. I host a show, Pop After Hours, which is 9:30 to 10:30 on Wednesdays. Has to be a late slot so I can swear and play explicit music. And I've done 6 episodes so far, and it's really, really fun. Like, I'm loving it. Trying out a couple different formats right now, a couple different approaches, like special artist-focused episodes, or special like genre-focused episodes, or just like a weekly track roundup. Like, I'm still figuring it out, but it's really, really fun. And I'm really grateful that like my experience at Woroni helped me develop skills to then go and do that. In terms of like lessons, I guess I'd say that student radio is really what you make of it. Like, there's so much room for ideas, and there's so many like really cool people floating like really cool things that we could do. But in reality, it's like up to you to sort of get on it and do it. Like, no one else is gonna come along and sort of like pick. Well, I mean, it's really valuable to sort of work with another producer or a couple other people, because that really takes like the burden off just you and helps you sort of get your project done, and they can pick up the slack for you, might be busy or something like that. It's also really hard not to overcommit and attempt too many projects, so make sure you stick to sort of 1 or 2 at a time, because like last time I had an idea for a rotating DJ slot, like guest DJs every Friday night. Then I was also doing the live lounge, I was also producing and presenting, so I just never ended up finishing that DJ slot idea. Another thing I learned was that networking, but not necessarily like super formally, just any networking is really, really useful. Like, the amount of times I would message the art director at Woroni Print, just being like, could you do some art for one of my shows, please? Like, because again, it just like improves the quality of your presenter's experience if they're getting like a little bit of thumbnail to go with their show. And it was just things like that where you could just reach out to someone that you've met once or twice, and they can do you a favor and you can do them a favor later. It was super, super useful and valuable. And finally, I really like producing because the music was like, I discovered so many different genres of music and stuff that I've never listened to before, especially in like DJ sets that I would be producing for. Punk, disco, like all sorts of stuff. In fact, I first heard like, my show at 2XX is mainly hyperpop, I'd say, at Woroni in 2019, just a show about like 100 gigs or something. And from there, I was like, wow, okay. So yeah, strongly recommend it. It's awesome, we're having a great time, and I'm really grateful for Woroni existing and giving me that opportunity. Thanks.
So our last speaker of the day, so it's John. So there are technical officer of Woroni Radio, and they'll sort of show you how you get started in podcasting, just the basics of technology and stuff you need to get started.
Okay, as I said before, I'm Beck. Woroni Tech officer for 3 years now. Before that, did 6 months co-hosting a show doing community radio in Melbourne. Then moved to Canberra, thought I'll try the tech stuff out, and 3 years later, here I am. So it's fairly easy to get started recording your own shows, podcasts, whatever. Everyone pretty much has a phone nowadays. iPhone, voice memo app, that's all you need. Just hit record, and it's the cheapest, quickest, easiest way to start making content. One thing which might, a couple of cons of that though, blankets. You want to use blankets, otherwise the sound will be very scratchy and not very nice. So I remember once when I was practicing in Melbourne, I had an interview with someone overseas, and when I was recording it, I didn't want to be in my room where it was loud, open, scratchy, outside sounds. Just got my Duna blanket, threw it over myself. That works perfectly. Don't have to worry about fancy soundproofing or anything like that. That will work for now. Cheap, easy, quickest way to do it. Soundproof and make your sound a little bit tighter and neater so you don't hurt your listeners' ears. Another way, Skype, Zoom. We've been using Zoom for the last year or so now, so we're all fairly confident with that. That's another way you can easily record shows with guests overseas in the States, not where you are. I think we've had a few presenters with Woroni Radio call their guests using Zoom, and it's worked quite well. A couple of caveats of Zoom or Skype or recording on your laptop would be, can be a bit echoey, especially with Zoom I found. So that's when you might want to move into editing your sounds a bit just so it's not as echoey and you don't get feedback from yourself or your guests. Laptop recordings, just like a phone, most laptops have an inbuilt microphone. You can just record yourself on that. Again, blankets are soundproofing. Excellent idea. Silly but cheap. And then if down the track you're like, really into podcasting, radio, what else is out there? So for example, we have a Zoom mic, which one's just at the front here we use, which is just portable handheld mic, very good. Very pricey. I believe that's about $400 to $500 nowadays. So it's not very much student budget friendly, but if you're doing say a Woroni show or something with us, we'll probably be able to borrow them out for you. You can loan it for a couple of days or so. Do your show using one of them. It sounds very nice and a lot cleaner than say your phone or laptop under your blanket in your bed. Yeah, plenty of podcasts start out fairly basic with phones, computer recordings, and they just work themselves up from there. Don't have to worry about sounding fancy and professional at first. Don't be afraid to do whatever you want with podcasts. That's the best way to learn from it. See what you like, what you don't like, what you enjoy doing. Have a bit of fun. A couple of tips with editing your podcasts. Hopefully down the track next semester another event might be running an audio editing workshop or two. But for now, just a couple of basics. If you're wanting to record a show and play music, number one rule, make sure you edit out all unlicensed music. Otherwise, that's a big no-no. Audacity is an excellent free tool that you can use to easily just cut the music up. Has a couple of other nice features being used. There's plenty of online tutorials for free, so I recommend just searching up Audacity tutorials. And there's heaps of guides and videos on how to use pretty much anything in there. If you do have the money or access to an Adobe Creative Cloud subscription, I would highly recommend Adobe Audition as well. It's a wonderful tool. However, again, I think it's about $30 per month by itself. So not very much in a student budget range. Yep, so a couple more editing tips. Making sure you remove copyrighted music, things you don't have license to use. Don't want to get in trouble over that. When you're editing, a couple of tips to look at first would be equalizing and compressing your audio so the sound levels are a bit more equal, especially if you have guests with different volumes. You don't want to be listening to a very quiet guest and then have a host be very loud straight afterwards. So learning how to compress and equalize your audio, that's probably one of the biggest tools you'd use if you're wanting to edit podcasts into something to make it sound a lot nicer. And again, use blankets. Cannot recommend it highly enough. And yeah, comments, questions. If you have any questions just in general with radio or broadcasting technology, please feel free to email myself rather. Love chatting about it and always keen to chat about it. Thanks.
So now we have a giveaway for 2 licenses in Hindenburg and this Pro. So they're worth about $1,000. So those of you that said yes, this is more event like you would have got the slip just in the front. Yeah. So we'll just have Olivia, our events officer, just come up to the front and just announce the 2 numbers. We'll do it all serious.
So, I've got it.
Yeah.
On the app, so I'm cheating. The first number is 8. The second is 20.
And just for everyone else, so Chris, he set up 60 days code, you just feed it into your email. You can just try out see what it's like, and if you're into podcasting, just get into it. So it's $120 all the time, like the basic license. So it's not that expensive, but it's good. So there's a QR code just in your brochure or just on the front. Yeah. And just finally, this concludes our event for today. So we had a few speakers from the industry, some student speakers, Chris from Hindenburg, and that wraps up the event. So the journey ahead, if you decide to get involved with Woroni, I know a lot of you are involved already, just within our shows, producing or presenting, but next semester we'll have more applications. Just so you can use our studios and do
Yes, I'll just add something to that. So for people who want to get involved in Woroni, if you haven't got a show already, if you're thinking about it, we'll be opening up show applications again. We've got plenty of slots in the second half of this semester. We're already adding 2 new DJ shows. We'd be happy to add any more content shows, anything like that. We're also on the look for 1 casual producer. So if anything we said piqued your interest about producing, it is a great way to learn about presenting and everything else. So if anyone's interested, send through an email to radio@woroni.com.au and anything else. Radio show pictures, also radio@woroni.com.au. Send it through there. We don't have any blankets in our studio, but if you do want to record things in there, the audio quality is pretty okay. So yes, anytime you want to hire out the studio, just send an email. Anything else you want to do, send an email. It's a sad one, so be happy for more emails. But yes.
Yep. And that's what concludes our event for today. And we'll be having more of these just throughout the year. So if you like this event, we'll be sending out feedback form just to see how we can improve and what topics we can cover just in our next and just from now till 7 o'clock, we're free to mingle with us within ambush just with our guests. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy.